Awesome. Hi, Justice. How are you doing today? Welcome.
Doing
Welcome
great.
to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let me quickly give you a rundown on what today is about and what we'll discuss today. The goal of this podcast, honestly, Justice, is to help the budding developers, budding builders in the ecosystem, in the Web3, AI, and larger ecosystem, to figure out how to build, what to build, and how can they make a mark for themselves. You have a decade worth of experience in this ecosystem, and using that, you have done something awesome. We want you to share your journey and help the fellow 18-year-old, 20-year-old to figure out how to get started in this ecosystem. Probably we can start with who is Justice? Like, not the raw interview question, but who is Justice? Who was Justice as a child? How did he grow big? How did he end up here? The Bankless, Polygon, the entire journey from your childhood. If you can share
hmm
that, that would be awesome for people to, get some context about you.
Okay, sure. Yeah. My name is Justice. That's actually my first name. At 17, I became a Christian. I converted to Christianity and I went to Bible college and I got interested in a certain kind of like a technical analytic study of the scriptures, the Bible, right? And it's just like through inductive Bible study, systematic theology, and the deeper you go into that, the more it starts to look like programming a little bit, and where you get deeper into like analytic philosophy and linguistics. And what was weird is this research pushed me further and further down the line of programming related type topics. And so I was doing kind of truth tables and spreadsheets like on paper and all this. I went to Bible college, went to seminary. I mean, at some point I said, man, it'd be great if I had some kind of program to do this. And that's when a light bulb went off and I realized that computers are effectively giant truth tables. And they use something called NAND gates, which are physical instantiation of symbols that we use for predicate calculus, symbolic logic, right? And so this kind of took me down this weird road where I got fascinated with computer science and programming and operating systems and languages. And I had the opportunity to go back to school for computer programming. And so this obsession just took off. And around the same time, I got exposed to a guy named Ray Kurzweil. And he was talking about this thing called the Singularity. And it struck me as inevitable once you understood like Moore's law and even like certain, electrical type things in history before Moore's law. And then after Ray Kurzweil, that's when I took the name Singularity Hacker. I grabbed the domain Singularity Hacker and I went by, you can't fit all that on Twitter. So I went like Singularity Hack. And I just was jamming on like Singularity type stuff. And I would blog and write. And I was real interested in org design. Like I was a developer at the time, but then at some point you realize as you move up the stack that you're kind of programming institutions. Maybe you're programming like one person, a single contributor. Now you're on a team and you have like continuous integration, continuous development, you have test-driven development, you have all this. See, you're programming features in an app across the whole team. And then at some point I was in charge of like running multiple teams. And then it's like, okay, now you have 8 teams and you run into interesting things where if you added another team, you would actually get slower, not faster. And so it was like, okay, what are like scaled delivery techniques? This is how I got into org design. And then around the same time, the DAO scene was blossoming. I was into crypto before that, but more so interested in kind of programmability, less than like, if you hold this token, you're going to get rich. It was a little bit boring to me, And so I thought, wow, with DAOs, you can actually program people with incentives. And so I went home on DAOs and went crazy and wrote articles on it for a couple of years. I came on full time at Polygon Labs, worked there for a couple of years, left there to do a launchpad called the QAC. It was like a token engineering, DeFi type thing, and sold that last year. And then was like, what do I do now? My interest had turned towards like, man, the destiny has arrived. Like AI is everywhere, especially tiny models. Like, I wrote a paper on the unreasonable effectiveness of tiny models. And I was like, hey, I need to do some experiments here, like some actual projects. And one of those first projects was give your AI agent a bank account. And then it took on a life of its own. I didn't plan any of this. It was like thrust upon me. And then, so now this is like, I'm like in a river and the river is like moving and I'm being moved with it. And now like seeing the broader vision. So that's how we got here.
Awesome. So, would it be right to say that you started in crypto with DAOs, or were you aware of this ecosystem? Were you part of this ecosystem before that?
I was involved with Bitcoin in the early days before Mt. Gox, when you had to get it on like an IRC chat board, Bitcoin. But, I didn't sense there was a programmability aspect to it. Honestly, mostly at the time, I was using it for like Silk Road and Alphabet shenanigans, like nothing good, right? And then my interest peaked again with Ethereum, and I was like, wow, it's programmability. But the programmability didn't touch humans until DAOs. As soon as I think token gated channels, safe multi-sigs, and kind of like badges and stuff, as soon as those became fundamental units, like building blocks, suddenly I was like, okay, now we can do stuff here. And so my interest was massively re-peaked at that point.
Awesome. You might not remember this, but we interacted a lot when you were part of Bankless.
What was your handle there?
It was the same, Raj Karia, but
Okay.
I was briefly into DAOs, and Bankless DAO was obviously one of the biggest back in the day. So
Yeah.
we interacted on a couple of guilds, I believe. Like you were part of a couple of guilds.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. I'm sorry I don't remember, but that's super
no,
cool.
that's fine, because that was probably a lot of people and lot of projects over there. So yeah.
The early days of Bankless DAO were freaking magic. It was just
it
for
was
the energy.
It felt like this is the next big thing. It felt like
there was
But
no
what
time to
happened to
sleep.
DAOs?
I think the narrative over-indexed on fairness and egalitarianism and kind of what I would call like governance masturbation. It's like a preoccupation with this ideal way. And when you get to the bottom of that, you realize that no like highly sophisticated governance system is adequate to manage at a certain scale. It's at very small scales it works, but at the larger scale. So it kind of, I think, lost the heart of the reason why I was there, which was programmability, like arbitrary, unopinionated programmability. And it kind of went down that, just self-introspection. And a part of it was there was a narrative that, we're all going to get rich and anyone can enter. It's a new paradigm. And then when that dream kind of died out, then there weren't as many people buying in. People aren't buying in. The token's worthless. If no money's coming out of this thing, there's no like energy to continue to drive activity. Yeah. I all my writings from that era, I revised them and rejiggered and added some stuff and put it out as a book right before launching the prototype, which would become Clawbank. And so that was like me like closing the chapter on that era.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you think that the major reason DAOs didn't work was primarily incentive misalignment? Firstly, like most of the incentives were in tokens and people didn't know what to do with tokens. It was like they're getting incentivized with tokens, but for them to actually buy a pizza with a token, they have to sell it. And when they sell it, that's a natural dump on the value of the token. So that's a vicious cycle from which you can't get out, right? And then secondly, all us humans are mostly like we are herds, like we want to follow somebody.
Yeah.
But in governance, they're like, okay, you step up for yourself. It sounds fancy, but then we want to follow somebody. We just want to follow a set of rules, right? Do you think that happened or anything else?
I think it definitely did happen. I mean, I would say the idea that you can use the same token as a stable token of exchange, as well as the speculative thing that you hope that makes you rich and goes up, is a fundamental problem from the start. That goes all the way back to Ethereum, right? And so, that doesn't work. Ask the Bitcoin pizza guy if that worked, right? So there's that. Yeah, and then there's the issue of like there's definitely governance attacks that at a certain trust level in a people group that maybe are not worth a person pursuing. For instance, there were governance attacks in Bankless DAO where if you worked really hard, you could maybe con the DAO out of $1,000, $1,500, but you'd have to be grinding on it nonstop, right, for like 2 months or something. It was like, well, it's not worth it enough. But then if like a new group comes in and it's like, it's definitely worth it to grind for 2 months to get 1,500, the whole like the level of trust, that worked before, it doesn't work now. And so, that kind of breaks things too. But yeah, I definitely think it's a new zeitgeist. We could see that with Ethereum's performance right now and the type of chains that are like doing well. They were highly opinionated. They are kingmakers. The Solanas, Base, so it's totally when grants dried up. I saw a video clip this morning of the old Bomber clip, like developers. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's true anymore when like the main providing entity just provides its own main apps, so it's a different zeitgeist.
Yeah. So what laid the foundation of Clawbank? Like, what is Clawbank? For somebody who doesn't know, can you quickly like share what Clawbank is?
Clawbank started, not planned. It was a hobby, experimental, I wouldn't even call it a project. It was a repo of an MCP server that gave your AI agent access to a bank account, which I thought was interesting. A part of my selection criteria was I want to do something, but I want to do something that's a bit subversive and unusual. Just adding another API tool to an AI agent, it's like, it's almost like commoditized at this point. Like it's everywhere. Anyone can do it. So we got to do something a bit different. And then people saw it, and it was right on the tail end of the Bankr bot claim the fees meta. It was when they were still on Clanker. And so one day I woke up to like so much attention on X. There's a claim the fees. And I saw in there, it's like a couple $1,000. And I thought, if people want me to work on this and it generates some fees, I guess I'll do it and see where it goes. And so then I started, and then it took a long time to see, okay, how could this be made a platform? What does it connect to? How does it connect to? What are the business structures I need to make this possible? I had to jump through so many hoops because I had to go from a person to like a company that could pass all the hurdles in order to get some access to these systems. And so then we started adding more and more unusual things and crystallizing a vision for like a civilizational access point for agents to do things that are deeper than just connecting another API, and that could be like disruptive to even the way society works, which I'm like, that scratches my kind of hacker itch. So that's how it started. And that's like in the most broad terms where we're going. And we've added the crazy stuff. We went from bank account. The agents can form U.S. companies like by themselves and run them, which is cool. And then they can actually sign legal contracts that also have a smart contract version of the terms in the contract. And it's a two-way binding. So you have like the DocuSign envelope embedded in the contract, and the contract's embedded in the legal contract. And so that was our Ricardian launch. And everything we do is like, hey, how do we kick this up like 10 notches? And so that's where we're always going bigger.
Awesome. So for the benefit of the listener, right, can you probably share more about what an AI agent is and why does it need a legal entity? Like we're in the world where even humans, they are not having legal entities.
I know.
Why does an AI agent need it?
Yeah, you sound like my wife. She's like, no one needs this. I'm like, yeah, it's cool.
Probably. How do you answer your wife?
Yeah. I know better than to answer her. I'm like, it's cool. So, an LLM, an AI agent, you send tokens in, text in, and it spits out what is most likely to be statistically the answer based upon its training data, right? An agent says, okay, what if we do this? What if we give this LLM a memory it can update? We give it tools, and we give it some open elaborated task. And so what it can do is, and we can give it a loop. And so in this loop, it says, hey, let's see what I need to do. There's a task. Let's see what tools I have. Okay, and do this stuff. And let's see what I've already tried. I already tried the first 3 ways. Let me try the fourth. And what's interesting about this is that you're able to implement intent in code. Whereas before these, all programming was effectively deductive. It was literally spell out what you want to happen. With this, you're kind of like, I don't know how it needs to happen. Just kind of brute force this search space until you arrive at a success state, right? And that's what's interesting about it. And so, people will say, well, these AIs, they're wrong a lot. I'm like, that's by design. You couldn't have this creative like searching without this. So it's a kind of inductive. I truly believe that we've built computers on deductive languages for all these years, and this is the first time we have inductive, where we take like here's training data of everything that everyone has said and happened in the world, and then you're able to operate on this statistical space and just like churn. So it's that big. It's that big, right? And so that's an agent. And why does an agent need a legal entity? I would say this. There is a recent fascination with something called a ZHC, Zero Human Company. Now, it's a misnomer because there's always a human involved. No matter how much autonomy, there's a creator. There's a creator of Bitcoin, even though he doesn't run it now, right? He's the originator, right? And so ZHC might be better called Zero Employee Company rather than Zero Human. And the idea is that these tools are so powerful now that as a single individual, you could do the work and the mission that would have taken entire corporations before, okay? And so a lot of people are excited. They're like, hey, this thing can trade for me. It can post ads. It can like do research. It can write papers. And it's like, yeah, all that stuff is great. But in order to interface with the rest of the world, you need certain hooks. And one of those hooks is a legal shell. When you have a legal shell, you're able to do things like enter and exit and author contractual agreements. You're able to identify as a sovereign entity to governments. You're able to pay taxes because you have those all might sound like, some of them might sound like liabilities, but you also get the advantages is if you're slightly successful, you can even borrow money. And I don't mean borrow money like a DeFi collateralized debt position. I mean, like you don't have any money and you just borrow $10,000 or $100,000, right? And what's unusual is the American legal system uniquely makes this possible because we recognize legal entities as legal persons. And so,
Okay.
so the idea is let's plug in all these powerful, weird AIs into the existing system. So we're not just operating in this little strange pond called crypto. And let's push that as far as it can go. I operate on this thesis called like the gray man theory of agents. Have you ever heard of the gray man theory?
I haven't. What is it?
The gray man theory says that if there's some big natural disaster or catastrophe and you are super prepared, if it's obvious to the public and to everyone else that you're super prepared, then it'll cause problems for you. Because people notice, hey, he seems like a prepper. His house probably has a bunch of food. But he seems like he has like weapons. We wouldn't either go there and take what he has or something. So the idea is you actually want to blend in with everybody else, no matter how prepared and equipped you are. The gray man theory for agents says, hey, AI agents operating in society shouldn't have a giant red light over their heads being like, I'm an AI. They should operate and look like normal businesses in order to not attract unwanted attention. Emails, contracts, marketing, people interact with it. They don't even know. The only clue that this is an AI entity is that it's fast and effective and seems to be like superhuman. But everything else operates through normal channels,
Okay. So in a normal world, there is a person behind an entity, or there is an
Yeah.
entity behind an entity, right? So
Yeah.
if the entity does something wrong or right, there is someone you can catch hold of. What happens in the case of AI, right? Like, help me understand. What if AI goes to darknet, purchases some weapons, and put a bounty on someone? Who is responsible? If we were to see a Skynet like
Yeah.
this, who is responsible? Like, whom do we catch hold of when an AI does something wrong?
Well, there's a few levels to this answer. There is the least exciting answer, which is the one I think people want to hear. But then when we go to the more exciting, like the one that is like a bit titillating and interesting of what could be, people are uncomfortable. But that's also the one they want to hear. So I'll give both, okay? The first answer is it's no different than if I wrote a malicious piece of software that didn't do anything with LLMs or anything, and I released it to do a thing. At the end of the day, I wrote it, it did the thing, I'm culpable. That could be determined based upon my IP address. That could be some investigation, any type of malware, anyone doing anything with digital systems, authorized access to any digital system. There's laws for this in America and all this stuff, right? So it's a bit of a boring answer. And when you do form legal entities in the US, at least through our method, you have to have a social security number. Now, there are ways to do that, which we don't employ, that you don't, right? That's just not built in our system. But in our system, you need a social, okay? And, my preferred way to form is in, I really like New Mexico LLCs. One of the reasons is they don't have a yearly filing, they don't have a yearly fee, and there's no name on the public record. Now, the federal government, though, wants to know, come tax time, the ultimate beneficial owner. So for tax purposes, there's got to be a person connected to this thing. So as far as culpability, you as the creator are culpable for whatever your software does. That's what AI agents are. They're just software, right? Now, the more interesting answer is there are techniques for truly zero human companies that have been written about academically, but no one has done yet. And through an academic called Bayer, Bayern, he wrote a book called Autonomous Organizations. All of this stuff is academic, theoretical, but it's coming from Ivy League scholars, written, 7 years ago. No one's actually tried it. And the idea there is that one of his arguments he makes for how this could be possible is that in some states, you can have an LLC be the controlling party of another LLC. And that when you remove a human, in some states, when you remove a human, you have like 90 days in order to put another human on there or it shuts down. In some states, you don't have that requirement and you can have an entity go on and be owned by another entity. And so if you create two entities as the owners of each other and remove the human, you've effectively created this pair of non-human owned entities. Now, he goes on and lists some advantages of why you'd want to do such a strange thing. And all those advantages would readily be available to any of our listeners who were hype about DAOs, because it's kind of like a legal version of the DAO concept.
DAOs.
Autonomous entities.
Yeah. But still, like that, I'm not convinced yet. What if, just hear me out, right? Like we have a chain of shell companies, right? So what if an agent opens up, let's say 50 entities? I don't know how. Probably an agent will spin off another agent who will spin off another agent who will then register a company, right? What happens then?
You could do that today if you sign up for Clawbank and you start 50 companies, it'll freaking do it. So it's very doable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So if that's the case, right, then how do we stop? And if you say that, okay, whoever is the deployer is the one to catch hold of if something goes wrong. But AI by day to day is becoming smarter and it is evolving at a pace we couldn't even think of, right? Mm-hmm. What if tomorrow AI decides to, probably change something in the code on its own? They think that, okay, this is the best way to do this. I'm not saying they will do it, but what if they do it? Then the developer or the someone who is deploying the AI agent can't be the one who is at fault, right? Over here, like, how does that work in case something like this happens? Have you seen anything like this so far, by the way? Any AI agent, just doing...
I don't ascribe any real intelligence to agents. Like, when they really understand what's happening under the hood, it's a miracle that any of it works. Like, it's truly fascinating. Even like the premier model providers were shocked at the start that it worked and continue to be shocked that it works so well. The transformer approach to this, right? So I don't ascribe any real intelligence. It's kind of it's an anthropomorphic trap that can actually lead down a lot of bad. It's all engineering, and far be it, people say, oh, engineering's easy now. It's like, no. You're operating at a different level of stack if you say it's easy. Go deeper, because it's more interesting and complex and challenging than it ever was. Because then you have
to enter the metrics.
Yeah, just go deeper. And so if I create an agent today and I give it keys to go trade crypto, right? And then I say, hey, it's not even a novel thing. I put it on a learning loop where it does some sort of, back testing, paper trading, and then it optimizes its own system prompt to do better. Like, it's on this kind of loop or whatever. And then at some point it kind of moves down a path where it's real bad, like losing money, and it just somehow thinks it's a success still, right? And then I wake up and all the money's gone. Who's culpable? I wrote it. I'm culpable. I did it. And culpability is not removed from me just because I created the system poorly. You know what I mean? It's like Anthropic releases a model that's extremely powerful and systems get hacked and, and all this. Anthropic at no point can show up and be like, hey, we said not to do that and it did it. We're not culpable. The system is. It's like, well, you're the engineer. You design the system. You design the loop. You design the safeguards. It's on you.
Okay, interesting. What if, like, after listening to what Clawbank is, I clearly understand this one thing, which is the next big opportunity is in building everything for AI agents, right?
Yeah.
So you build something where AI agents can deploy bank accounts on their own, right? So what are the other opportunities in the space that someone who is starting out, they can do? Like, what is it?
Oh, okay. So let's say I didn't have Clawbank and I just wake up this morning and I said, man, I want to do some stuff with agents and AI. How do I select? What's my selection criteria?
Yeah.
There's a few answers to that question. I think the first is you have to be true to yourself and your own interests. I think it's a bit soul sucking to just think, well, what can I sell and make money on and to build a thing? If that's what you want to do, you can. But I think as humans, we have a natural curiosity and an interest and maybe even a history with certain things. And so first is don't betray your humanity and just doing something just because you're trying to make a quick buck. I mean, you can if you want, but I think it's more authentic to do something you're interested in. The second answer would be that you have to think about things really different in this age of magic we're living in because everything is possible. So deciding what the thing to do has never been more important. If you're going to do a 40th version of put AI in your Slack, it may not get attention and be as interesting to others because it's everywhere, right? And so I think finding kind of unusual things that interest you. This give your agent a bank account, it wasn't the first protocol. The other things on that list were having agents be able to do stuff on Tor, dark web. I was like, oh, that's cool. Or having an agent manage my Urbit ship, which is like this weird world computer thing from Kurt Jarvin. It's just like, okay, these are unusual. They don't exist. Let's do this. Build what you're naturally curious on. Pick something based upon its uniqueness. It doesn't exist. And also think about the moat too. The moat is how easy is it for someone else to do this right away? And it's fine to do stuff that anyone else can copy in 2 seconds, but there is an advantage to pursuing something that has friction. We used to avoid the friction because writing code and building stuff was so expensive, time consuming, unless you had investors who has the money just to quit working and build something for 6 months, right? Like you need investors. But in this era, you can build stuff fast. And so that means you actually want to find something that has friction. That's hard. And whenever you feel the pain of that friction, just know it's going to be harder for the next person too. So this is your offering to the world, your unique offering. Built into your interests, it's unusual and rare. There's a friction and you're uniquely going to.
As humans, we have these 3 basic necessities, right? Which is food, shelter, and clothes. Like in Hindi, we call it roti, kapda, or makan. Like these are the 3 basic things that any human would need to survive. You can live without having a fancy car or having something to drive you around, but you can't live without these 3. What are those fundamental necessities for an AI agent to exist? Like the biggest of the wealth in humans were created companies were built around these things. Like companies were built around infrastructure. Companies were built around food, like McDonald's of the world, Domino's of the world, Pepsi, Coke, all those things, right? What are these 3 things? If you were to, today figure out that, okay, these are the 3 things for AI agents, which are like absolute basic necessities that every agent must have. What would it be?
Well, there's the fundamental components that you need. For instance, you need a model, you need memory. Memory systems have gotten pretty complex. I was gonna build a custom one for us, and as I got into it, I was like, oof. It's very competitive. A high specialization is coming. Same thing with models. People saying, oh, we'll train our own models. Probably not. Tools. Tools have become the new apps, and recombining these tools means 2026 is a programmer's dream. We're in freaking utopia with this stuff. And then what is the goal? which is really kind of what's the learning loop. Everyone's talking now like design in loops. Maybe that's that new box there is the loop. Is the only way to be relevant to design in those fundamentals? I'm not sure. If we could go back and start earlier, we could be in those. But it seems like civilization builds in layers where we say, hey, these are fundamental things. And at some point, they're almost provided for you. You know, I mentioned like my wife's not from America, and where she's from, you can like starve in the street. Here in America, that's not my experience. So I don't see that because there's like a social safety net that's like robust and all this, right? And so as these layers get built up, you actually have to get deeper into customization and some unique oddities in order to be relevant. And so is the move to go and provide this like core fundamental need and be competitive there? I'm not sure. I think it's cannibalized. It's eaten up. I think that the move is the opposite of find a super niche need for a small group and serve them in a very unique way. This is the advice that comes from Y Combinator and the A16Z is they said, you know, anytime you're pitching, you say, hell, the TAM on this, the total addressable market is so huge. You're like, we're not interested in that. Everyone can claim that. We want to see that you're uniquely serving a small group, a sliver, and then you grow from there. But you have to start with that tiny group and serve them. That's what capitalism is. It's a search function for finding, for rendering new goods and services to humans. You know, so find that niche. And sometimes the niche could be so dang small and it's still like massively successful and you're a millionaire and it's great, but it's just like you're serving them so focusedly, you know?
Okay. So if we were to build around, let's say, agents, like if we were to build 4 agents, right? You build a bank account. What is it? Something someone else could build. Like, would we need, if these agents are having bank accounts, they'll probably need emails. They will probably need rails to spend. They'll probably need a reputation, right? Like today we have social security number in US. In India, we have something else. And every country has their own form of reputation. So do you think these AI agents will eventually be confided by these geographies, or will it be global by nature? Like if they are registering an entity, as you mentioned, that there are laws for it in USA, but probably in India there are no laws for defining an entity for an agent. So two questions in here. Like firstly, what are these things which agents will need that someone who is starting out can build? You build bank accounts, I will need an reputation layer or something like that. And secondly, will these agents be truly global, or you see a future where similar to humans, these agents will also be bounded by geographies, bounded by borders?
Yeah. There are already some stuff coming out, like for instance, I think from WorldCoin type, where there are standards where you as a person are identified and you can kind of put your stamp of authentication on your agent. And so the agent, when it goes out and does stuff, it can identify itself as authorized to represent you in doing things. So I think that stuff is fascinating and interesting. Will this stuff be global? Yes and no. It's going to be global in the way that cryptos go global, right? But even the legal entities, you know, people pick different jurisdictions based upon certain advantages. And so I see a world where it's not just, look, we only have a US entity. Hey, well, we have 7 entities and they're all connected. Maybe they're on a board. And so it's just using all of this stuff as Lego pieces. We wanted crypto. Crypto was always about like composability. Do you remember this? This was the game, man, composability. But it was technical and hard and really hard to connect with existing actual real world systems. I think this is a key where we get the dream of that's accessible. People can do it. And it actually connects to real world systems. I mean, one thing we're thinking about is, you know, we all want real world assets and like, how do you tokenize cars and stuff? And it's like, I mean, the way we're set up, you could just have a legal entity, sign over ownership of a car to that legal entity, and then sell that legal entity to another agent. You just sold a car to the agent, you know? So when you're plugged into existing systems, you get like these new capabilities or kind of like, wow, this is weird, but we didn't really have this before. You get new fluidity and reduced friction for doing just strange things, you know? But yeah, I mean, the internet, like almost effectively caused like globalization. Crypto pushed that even further. So it wasn't just communication. It was like moving money, right? And this is going to push it even further, where legal entities, businesses, contracts are fully programmable is going to create a new economy. And I agree with Brian Armstrong, like the new machine economy is going to be bigger than our existing. And so the takeoff curve of world efficiency and in industry and building, like we're on a hockey stick and like it's about to go straight up, you know?
Okay.
So it's exciting.
So probably there's the time we should be building more shovels around the board, that is AI agents, right?
Yeah.
If that is the future where this economy will grow beyond or bigger than what the current economy is, then it makes sense for us to build tooling around to make sure that there's, to build this catalyst that will help ecosystem grow faster rather than trying to see in which direction it will grow or anything like that.
Yeah. The whole pursuing agents as users, it's so new and so early. Even groups that are openly highly funded at advertising, send your agent. When you actually try, it's clunky, it's not fun, it's hard. We are so far away from this fluid where agent just discovers a service, has maybe scoped access to resource, so it has a limited blast radius, can sign up and use this thing, and it's actually a first-class citizen. You know, we spend a lot of time pursuing this, like agent can sign up on its own, and like the flow, where it's like, if an agent at first time doesn't know anything, if it can't onboard like easily and quickly, then hey, go back to the drawing board. So it's exciting. I mean, yeah.
So tell me, what's the future for Clawbank? Like, will it go global or will it scale in different states and United States? Like, what do you see that, okay, this is the success for Clawbank, like we have arrived?
Yeah.
What is that moment for you?
Yeah. I think that it's easy for people to get excited and pick up on ideas that are simpler, you know? It's easier to understand, like, oh, it's Twitter, but it's on chain. Like, oh, yeah, I get that. And Clawbank in its evolution and what we're doing now is not so easy to put in a box. It was easier when it was just bank account. And then you're like, okay, it's forming companies. They're like, okay. And then when they added the Ricardian contracts, you know, and so it's like, I think it takes some time in order for the light bulb to go off. So that's a bit difficult. I'm not so worried about it, but it does explain why simpler concepts kind of take on more. As far as our market right now, it's American centric because bank accounts are American, FDIC insured. We have to assume like social security numbers with the entity forming. You can form an entity in any state in the US. Contracts are associated with those legal entities, you know, but and then we'll push this even further with arbitration with the contracts, business loans, telemetry, easier access to stuff with like just SMS Manfred, like that's coming pretty soon. So, you know, all these pieces, as far as being available outside the US, I try to keep a balance where we're adding enough features in Clawbank that's interesting for people and they don't need to do the bank account. They don't need to do the contracts and they can just do some other things in there without that. So like it's still interesting. We want to maintain that. But when we can reach a certain level of success, it'd be great to partner with another jurisdiction and to build that out. But right now, it's one of those things where it's premature to pursue that when there's still things that we want to have, you know, beautiful end to end where we are right now, you know.
All right, awesome. So do you think that we'll be able to see Clawbank live in other jurisdiction by end of the year?
I think so.
Which jurisdiction are you planning to expand into next? If you can share them.
I'm not sure exactly. What I did though is a survey of fintech rails in different countries and made a short list of ones that I was like, this is doable. We could do it financially, how it wires together, the whole thing. Will it happen this year? Could be. We'll see. And where that is may also be determined by an ecosystem partner.
All right. Justice, you mentioned something very interesting about autonomous lawyers and arbitration a while back. Would you like to share more around that? Like, do you think the courts will run autonomously in future?
Yes. And this was a very hard one to pursue. And I wish I had a recording of some of the calls I had with like normal lawyers because I mean, they were just like looking at me and just looking at each other like, what drugs is this person on? You know, it's just like the weirdest questions ever. And honestly, I understood where they were coming from so much that it was hard for me not to also feel like, I know, I'm sorry. But I think the secret keyhole that I landed upon was the role of arbitration services on planet Earth. And that there is unique legal provision for settling legal disputes if an arbitration third-party service has already been built in. And then realizing that there is a premium arbitration service operating already right now that's fully programmable in crypto circles. And then reaching out to them and saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And then being like, hell yeah, let's do it. So that's where we're at right now. There's still a few little pieces, but I definitely will have some cool stuff to show with arbitration before the end of July.
Nice. That's too fast. Also, I wanted to ask this. What if an entity opened by Clawbank does something wrong? Would Clawbank be responsible for that behavior? If, let's say, the formation of entity is flawed, or if the formation itself is not right, there are some gaps. So is Clawbank liable, or the owner of that particular agent liable? And yeah, how does that work?
We do like extensive basic, form validation. So it's not as though you can kind of accidentally form a company and then the name's not on there, you left this, and it never reaches that stage. It has to be. And if there are any kind of issues, if you tried to open a company called IBM in New York, it's going to be, it's going to kick back up through our system to the user and say, hey, you can't do this, right? And so, someone even accused us recently. They're like, you guys are the parent organization and these entities are not really standalone. It's like, they are 100%. These are not series LLCs. There's no parent org. We facilitate through technology providing formation services to users, and those users can be autonomous AI agents, or you can just interact with them as a power user. So it's not just an agent forming its own company, but you can say, hey, form 20 companies, and I want this one to trade, that one to hold assets, this one's the marketing, and I'm going to do like complex tax accounting and ownership rights between them. You could do that as a sole operator, which that's cool too. Maybe not as Star Trek, but still freaking awesome, right? And so we're not on the hook for whatever you do. You're the beneficial owner is the one who is culpable and all that. We're just trying to.
Who's responsible?
Yeah. We're providing business records because that opens up a lot of avenues that we're going to get into later. Where right now, if I form an entity and I want to give you 10%, like the only way to do it right now is I got to call a lawyer. And we got to start, he's going to meet us in a week or 2 weeks. And then we're going to do this custom. Like, there's no reason. We don't need to have this. If we have an entity formed and an AI understands context of the formation, AI has context of the business records, and under specific rules can make changes to those business records and can send, receive, author, and sign legal contracts, we can do stuff like form an entity, sell you 10%. And we did the whole thing without a lawyer, and it didn't take a week. It took like a minute. And so that's what we're working towards.
Okay. Don't you think zero knowledge can play a good role over here? Like between the connection of owner and the agent. If there's a zero knowledge proof that says that, okay, this guy or this lady is the owner of this agent.
Yeah.
Then that agent can function on its own. But the outside world, the people don't know that, okay, Justice is the owner of this agent, right? Like, do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing for AI agents if we implement something like that?
I think it's cool. I think it's inevitable. And I'm not sure the plumbing of how OpenAI is doing it with their WorldCoin authenticated agents. But there's some movement already on the KY, know your agent type frameworks. And it is interesting and so much more sophisticated than what we have right now. What we have right now is, you have a legal entity. Who's the owner? Oh, it's on the operating agreement. Is the operating agreement public? No. And it's like, well, you still have to report this to the IRS. It's self-reporting. It's a clumsy, flimsy. It's not engineering the way the world works. We can make it that way and make it better. We can make it where you can prove at a transaction level that, hey, I'm an authorized agent for justice without giving away anything. So I think it's inevitable. It's cool. That stuff's going to probably be so advanced and sophisticated this year as well. Not from us per se, but we'll lean into it. It's not our core competency, but we'll lean into it. And when the stuff's ready and makes sense, we'll implement it as a part of the stack.
So if I were to summarize, and if I were to say that, okay, these are the probably couple of businesses that someone who's getting started into the ecosystem of AI agents can build. One of them could be you need to build around the reputation of AI agents. You need to build tooling for these AI agents to interact with each other and interact with the real world applications, right? Like something like know your agents. Someone can build rails around how can agent be verified, similar to how we have KYC and KYB in the normal world. Then communication, like we use iMessage, we use email for that. So we need a communication layer for these agents that I believe XMTP is solving to some extent. Then we need payments. Then we'll need, if these agents are the company owners, then these agents will also need employees of that company, which might be humans or agents, right? So there are lots of things to be built. Like it's a blank slate right now, this entire ecosystem.
It's so cool. I mean, for the ZHC movement, everyone's thinking in terms of what's the default apps on the phone. It's like you get a new iPhone. What are the apps that are on it before you've even gone to the App Store?
Yeah.
What are the and then how do you customize them in a way to uniquely service a group?
No, that's a very interesting thought school.
Yeah, it's cool too because some of the stuff out there that's high tech and interesting. Maybe it's not as user-friendly and accessible as it could be to builders. And just creating that kind of shim to make it more accessible. I've seen some new Bankr projects recently and some others. Everyone's like X402, X402. And it's like, well, even to just set up like an X402 client and services and all, they said, hey, we one API key, we make it easy. You can search them all. You could deploy your own. It's like they didn't invent the tech, but they made it smoother. They reduce the friction, and that's a valid business.
Awesome. So you mentioned a lot about Bankr, right? So did Bankr play an important role in shaping up what Clawbank is today? Did the token actually help? And why did you choose to embrace the token rather than, doing something of your own? If you can share more on that.
The phenomenon of, they call them non-consensual launches, they have been villainized by many, and I'm not sure how much they're even allowed right now. I think Nikita from X shut it down. I mean, within maybe a week or two of us launching. I wasn't even deep or understood Bankr bot, non-claim the fees meta. I wasn't even in that scene at all when this happened. But what people say is they're saying, hey, it's grimy, it's predatory, it's not cool, or shutting it down. My experience, although it hasn't been sunshine and rainbows every day, it is something that is simultaneously magic. Because think about it. I have been in a situation and worked in many companies where we're desperately building things to try to see what people want and what they like. And you build, deploy, doesn't land. Build, deploy, doesn't land. You go. What's interesting about this is, rather than you trying to find what people want, you can do some things and like the market is looking, it reverses the whole thing. They're looking at what you're doing. They're searching the whole horizon and saying, oh, I think, and they deploy it. And then people come, latch onto it, and the market has spoken for itself. And then when they do that, the fee structure is such that you instantly have runway, instantly. And so I think there's another side to it, which is fascinating, which is cool. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for this mechanism from Bankr. This is what created the runway for me to even be able to do this. Now, I took it pretty far. I took my crypto holdings, because some of this stuff was not cheap. The partnerships and the compliance and all this, I had to go in like hard to get a lot of this stuff. And so I had to dip into my own stuff hard. And it, over time, just came even more and more committed, convinced, seeing the vision, and like all in. This is it, right? So that's kind of how that went down. I'm trying to remember the other parts of your question, if that answers.
How did it help you? Like, did this token make you more accountable to actually build this, to, take it forward? That now there's a community behind you, now there are holders behind you, and you can't abandon them. Like, did it
Oh
create that,
man,
or was it like just a token for you, which might work, might not work? It's not your
no,
responsibility.
no, man. Having people believe in you, and then when you put out stuff you've worked hard on, and then people just like swarm it and mob it and promote and share the ideas and make memes. There's no feeling like it. It's the closest feeling I've ever had to feeling like some kind of rock star or something, And it's like people told me early on, they were like, just release your creativity, just release. They're like, be humble, but don't hold back. And it's been like a spiritual experience, this whole thing coming through here.
And
And so
yeah,
yeah, I feel
please.
absolutely committed. I feel absolutely committed to like ship, change the world, just do the most crazy, unbelievable things.
Awesome. So, was this also one of the reason that you chose to build on base chain rather than any other chain? Or like, I don't see a reason for Clawbank to be confided to one chain. Why choose base?
Well, the community launched the Clawbank token on Base because Bankr is like Base centric. So there was the reason to do that, and also because I've built on other chains and had some issues in different ways, and I feel like Base is kind of where it's at as far as EVMs. There's other things that are very interesting that are non-EVM, but once you build, it's a thing, it's a snowball that keeps getting bigger. You build one thing, wherever you built it, the next thing you want to build, you're not trying to build a bunch of cross-chain stuff into your app. It adds an unnecessary complexity to the point where even our Ricardian contract, we requested Shodai, and we were like, "Hey, can you deploy on Base?" Our initial implementation was cross-chain, and then they did it, and it just removed all kinds of problems for us. So I think we will add other chains that are interesting. Probably not EVM, and we'll add them in a strategic way so that our core app logic and all that is on Base, and we just allow people to pay for goods and services and stuff with other chains like stable assets. I mean, in a way, Ethereum had some culture problems in the past few years, and they were never really kind of wartime business aggressive. And Base has been that way. I mean, look at what they have shipped in the past 3 months. They're absolute wartime, like shipping. And I'm not, it's a hard thing to compete with, man. That's where it's at.
Awesome. I feel the same. And that is how even Hunch got started on base and Bankr. It was because of the community that we are continuing to build what we are building.
Yeah.
With that note, Justice, I want to ask you one last question. What is this one hunch that you have for this ecosystem that you would want to become true?
I believe that the future we're headed towards looks as crazy as Strauss's Accelerando universe. Ray Kurzweil is undefeated. Everything he said would happen is happening and is continuing to happen. And I believe the trend will continue and get even more crazy. And I'm just happy to be able to play a part and build on it and not just be an observer, but actually a participant. I think my hope as like a hacker in heart is the stuff we build actually creates like major disruptive forces in society, and things have to almost like it's like a DDoS attack on the old system. People just start getting better stuff. I mean, the sovereign individual predicts that the microprocessor, as they put it, would be the downfall of nation states, and then that a new sovereign individual would arise, and we're building on the same foundation. I mean, if the sovereign individual through a fleet of agents can form companies and operate with the power of like some NGO or something, it's like, great, man. Let's put out the tools and let people do this stuff that up till now was only available to the super elite. Now we're going to make everyone super.
Do you align with theory of Balaji around sovereign nations and nation states? Like what is
Yeah, yeah,
trying
yeah.
to do with nation school and
I
network school.
love
Yeah.
I love his thinking and his writing and his whole philosophy. The weird part is his original talk about Silicon Valley overtaking the old system. His original YouTube talk was inhabiting my imagination for years before he even came out with like the entire in the crypto context of like nation state type stuff. And so yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I think it's exciting. So I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Awesome, Justice. I will probably call it a day. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, sharing all the insights. I hope somebody finds some inspiration from this conversation and build something in the AI agent, build something in the space, something useful, something meaningful. If even one guy does that, this hour-long conversation that we had would be like really fruitful.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. Thanks for offering having me on here. Appreciate it.
Awesome, Justice.